Well, as you know, I'm a huge Stranger Things fan, so I couldn't contain my excitement for the next season. So I did something a bit cunty, if you will. I was told by the internet not to look into this because it might contain potential spoilers for season 5. I mean, inevitably, the first shadow will contain spoilers for season 5 because it's the origin story of Henry Creel, how he got his powers, basically the starting point of Stranger Things, if you will. So, this is a fair warning for you guys. There might be things in this video that will ruin season 5 for you. I'm not entirely sure how much of the first shadow is canon, but I'm very sure the context will be more or less the same. So, get out of here if you have a decent level of patience. Stranger Things: The First Shadow is a Broadway show that's currently exclusive to Brits. I have no idea why it's not even accessible to Americans. And if you can't tell by my accent, I'm not a Brit, although my ancestors were colonized by them, which makes me a Brit in a way, I think. Anyway, just to be clear, I haven't watched this myself. Most of the info I got were from other YouTube videos and from the people online who have watched the Broadway show, and they leak the plot details, and I'm just copying from them, if I'm being very honest. I have taken information from a lot of sources and I have put it together in an orderly manner as much as I can. These details can be a bit here and there, but I believe I got the main plot points in the most accurate way possible, especially with the timeline. It's a bit confusing, but I'll try to convey it as properly as I can. Okay, so the show opens with an epic intro scene where it looks like they are going to a mission, but the scene doesn't happen in the real world. It happens in another dimension, and we see these soldiers are being dragged off by a strange humanoid creatures, aka Demogorgon. The show doesn't happen in the chronological order. We get introduced to the characters in Hawkins High, Henry Creel's circle, and his personal life basically, and then the show gets to the starting point. But I feel like it's better if I introduce the characters to you and explain the story in the chronological order, so you would have a brief idea on who the characters are and who are you supposed to know basically. So we see the OG's parents in the show, most of them at least. They don't really add anything to the plot. I think they were added to the show purely for fan service. But I guess it's kind of cool to see the OG's parents. I'll just give a small introduction to these characters and get to the sauce. So we are introduced to Bob Newby. Yes, the Bob who dies in the second season. He's the founder of Hawkins AV Club, and he is in high school at this point, obviously. Also, we learn he has an adopted sister, Patty Newby, who happens to be Henry's love interest. She is black. I'm not a racist, I didn't just drop this detail. This comes into play. This had to be mentioned because this happens in the 50s. She feels like an outsider because people treat her differently, of course, which is why feels connected to Henry. Because Henry feels like an outsider too, because you know why he's an oddball. So that's why I mentioned that detail, just to be clear. Next, we are introduced to her father, Newbie, who happens to be the principal of Hawkins High. And he's very religious, he's a super conservative dad. So, next, we are introduced to Joyce. She is not a bias yet, she is a Maldonado at this point. In her intro scene, she fools around with Lonnie Bias. Lonnie Bias was super toxic, just like he is in the TV show right now. He talks down on her when she wants to get out of Hawking, but he continuously discourages Joyce establish their relationship. So Joy's aim is to direct the school play, get out of Hawkins and go to another state and basically study theater. That's her aim. Then we are introduced to Ted Baylor, who was Mr. Popular in high school. I never saw this coming, honestly. A girlfriend, Karen Childress. She's a popular cheerleader. Ted and Karen are portrayed as a very romantic couple who can't keep their hands to themselves. Later, we get to know Karen only likes him because he's popular and rich. At one point, Henry uses his powers to read other people's mind, like we see in season 4, and we get to know she thinks that Ted is actually very boring and she doesn't really like her. Yikes. Then we are introduced to Walter Henderson, who happens to be Dustin's father. He's exactly the polar opposite of Dustin. He's a racist, he racially abuses Patty Newby, and at one point, He gives Sinclair's the weird looks. Yeah, they're Lucas's parents. Also, we get to know Dustin's mom, Claudia Ion. She was dating Dustin's dad at this point. She has a cat named Prancer, and it gets killed by Henry when he was discovering his powers, like we saw in season 4 when he kills random animals to increase his power. Like, these details are not necessary, of course, but it's so weird to think that Henry was connected to the kids' parents as much as he is connected to the kids. I know it isn't much, but the nerds will love it. Then we are introduced to Sue and Charles Sinclair, Lucas's parents, and Alan Munson, who happens to be Eddie's dad, and then of course Jim Hopper Jr. and Hopper's dad, Jim Hopper Sr. Hopper has some dad issues, and throughout the series, we see them getting into arguments, a lot of them, and later we get to know he sent him to become an army, like we already know that in season 4. Yeah, that's about introducing the characters. I did not expect it to take so long, Jesus Christ. Anyway, I'll get to the point directly. Let me start with the ship I was talking about initially. Brenner's dad was in that ship. The ship that basically Demogorgon wrecked, I mean, killed everyone in that ship. The ship was known as the USS Eldridge. The ship was not supposed to be teleported into another dimension. They accidentally got teleported there, and this dimension is not the upside down we know. It's entirely different. It's called the Dimension X. Y'all remember the orange colored dimension from season 4 when Levin beats Henry into the upside down? Yeah, she doesn't kick his ass into the upside down. She him into Dimension X. Now, exactly how Upside Down was created is still a mystery. The show doesn't answer that, and I mean the Broadway show. And there are numerous theories saying the eighth episode, which is named The Bridge, will explain this because they believe the bridge they are referring to is the upside down, and it connects the real world and Dimension X like a bridge. There's a theory that Will might have created it too, since time is frozen on the day he disappeared. I'm not sure about this, so let's just wait and see. All you have to know is Dimension X is entirely different from Upside Down. So yeah, anyway, getting back to the point, the USS Eldridge was built to teleport the soldiers to another state, so the enemies wouldn't know they are coming. That happens to be during the World War II, so I'm assuming to defeat the Germans, but instead of being teleported to another state, they get teleported into another dimension, which is Dimension X, and all the soldiers die in that, except Dr. Brenner's father. But when he gets back, when he makes it back to the real world, his blood type changes. And then they try to do a blood transfusion, and that doesn't work either. But before dying, Brenner's dad says so much about Dimension X that basically inspired him to become the person that he is today. Opening a gate to Dimension X is Brenner's only life goal at this point. This happens in 1943, and then after that, Brenner conducts a lot of experiment in the Nevada desert, where one day one of his agents ran away with some of Brenner's equipment near some desert caves. Brenner never found the agent, but a toy that belonged to Henry was found, who went missing in Dimension X for 12 hours and then he came back. Brenner tracks Henry using this toy and spies on Henry to find out what he is doing and how he has changed, basically stalking him. Henry got his hands on this stolen equipment and got teleported to Dimension X. So Henry wasn't an oddball from the very beginning. He was a normal kid, but ever since he got there, he changed because he interacted with the Mind Flayer and some of the Demogorgons, and that gave him powers. So, what you see in season 4 is basically a reunion. That wasn't his first time going to Dimension X, and I think he was able to change the Mind Flayer's shape at that point because he got more powerful because he was killing all those animals and he even killed his parents. So, he got more powerful, and now he's somehow able to control the mind flayer. But upon his arrival, he got really weird. He became more angry, didn't socialize, and he got super violent, which shows that he got possessed by the mind flayer even before the Creels got to Hawkins. Around 1959, the Creels moved to Hawkins, just like we see in season 4. They're happy. They're a happy family moving to Hawkins, Indiana. Initially, we see Virginia Creel, that's Henry's mom, being really affectionate with Henry, but later Henry becomes more violent. and he switches personality whenever the mind flare takes over. Very similar to Will's behavior from season 2. This makes Virginia fear Henry, and Victor still has PTSD from the war, and the town thinks he's a freak because at that point nobody understood what PTSD is. There are so many things that happens after this regarding Joyce's play, but I'll only talk about the things that are relevant to the plot. So Henry feels very isolated in Hawkins, Indiana. He gets weird looks, but no one does anything to him. Since the mind flare is controlling him at this point, it makes sense as to why he is odd. It's Patty Newby who also feels like an outsider because, like I said, she's black, and people weren't very accepting of people of color at that point. So Henry and Patty instantly connect and bond over comic books. Plus, Henry develops a crush on her. Joyce was actually very nice to Henry. So, yeah, Joyce and Henry actually go way back. And we might see a scene where they interact and talk about their past because it makes sense. Joyce was in Russia trying to save Hopper, right? So I think she might give an intel when she returns back on Henry. She would know who he is, right? In fact, Joyce cast Henry and Patty as leads in her stage drama because they had good chemistry. Patty and Henry get really close at this point, and at one point, Henry reveals that he has superpowers and she should stay away from him because he has done some bad things. That's what he says to Patty. But Patty actually looks past all this and tells him just because you have done some bad things, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. I was like, girl, what the fuck? She basically ignored all the red flags. He even after confessing to murdering animals, and that's all she had to say. I guess end of the day, it is really up to the look. So, but okay, and an interesting scene takes place that's worth mentioning. At one point, Henry describes how people are pretending to live a fake life and how meaningless their lives are, and they are basically corrupting the planet. A monologue that's similar to season 4. And he also mentions that he can hear other people's voices and it's driving him crazy. But Patty convinces him that he can use his powers for good. After hearing this, Henry creates a vision for Patty where she sings and everyone accepts her, and even her father is being very supportive of her. So the vision he created was a very positive and a happy vision, meaning he can use his powers for good as long as the mind flayer doesn't control him. But this is the only place where he uses his powers for good. Throughout this part of the story, you can see Henry is still murdering animals and becoming more powerful every day. But Patty isn't aware of these murders. At one point, Virginia tells Henry to stay away from Patty for her own protection. Because when the mind flayer takes over, Henry has no control and he becomes so violent. Henry ends up killing Dustin's mom's cat at one point. Hopper starts to investigate on this murder because he thinks it's strange, and gradually all the pets of the drama kid starts dying in the exact same way. So he gets Bob and Joyce's help to investigate on this. And they go on a quest looking for answers. Just like from the show, an epic team up happens here. I've said it already, Stranger Things nails it when it comes to team ups. Just reading this sounded so exciting to me. A weird love triangle happens during this scene. Hopper and Joyce are just yelling at each other, but in a adorable way, I think, like from the third season. Meanwhile, Bob admires Joyce from far away, hinting that he has feelings for her, but poor guy. I hope he gets to date her one day, and I certainly hope he lives happily with her ever after. So Henry's killing spree continues, and we see a very similar scene to Will's scene from season 2 in the playground when Mind Flayer takes control of Will. I think it's basically to say that Mind Flayer has entirely take control of Henry at this point. When Henry is getting flayed, Patty is right next to her, and then she tries to talk to Henry and to get back to his consciousness. Henry tries to fight this, but he fails. Professor Newby, who is Patty's father, walks in at this point and he demands to let go of Patty. Henry lifts him up using his power, meaning he's about to get Vecna, like from season 4. But Patty says, "You're a good person, you can fight this," and then finally she says, "I love you," and then demands Henry to say it back. This somehow gets to Henry, and he responds back with, "I love you too." So Henry is back in control at this point. Professor Newby doesn't die because of this, but he is severely injured. Joyce, Hopper, and Bob happen to be here because their investigation led them to Henry's house at that time. But they don't see the Henry using his powers and all. They just see injured Henry, and then they conclude that crazy Victor Creel is the one behind all the animal deaths. So, meaning they have no idea about Henry and his powers at this point. After this incident, Patty leaves Henry. Victoria still tries to talk to Henry and helps him, but it doesn't really work out because the mind flayer has entirely taken over him. At this point, Henry is entirely gone. So Virginia looks for a person who can take care of him and to keep him safe. Comes across Dr. Brenner. Dr. Brenner is aware of Henry and has been stalking him, like I mentioned earlier. And now he's got the perfect opportunity to test on Henry as much as he can. Meanwhile, Mr. Newby is seriously injured and he's at the hospital. And he reveals to Patty that he stole her when she was a baby to revive his relationship with his wife. But it didn't work and she ends up leaving him anyway. And that's the reason why her father wasn't very affectionate towards her. That is a crazy low, crazy detail to drop on your deathbed. He also says that he was affected by he was attacked by a monster when basically when Henry tried to Vecna him. This monster basically made him relive his worst nightmares, and Henry actually tried to fight back in the void and saved him from dying. And then he proceeds to draw the monster to show to Patty. The monster is of course the mind flayer. After Patty gets to know that he tried to save her dad's life, she goes back to look for him. But Victoria has already sent him to a Hawkins lab. But I'm not sure how this is possible. Be a coincidence. And she calls him, and then he communicates through his voice, and she's able to hear and reply as well. And mind you, he's at the lab at this point. She tells him she believes he's a good person and he should return. That's basically the gist of that conversation. So now we get to see the early stages of Henry in Hawkins' lab. This is a golden opportunity for Brenner, so he basically experiments on Henry, abuses him, takes multiple blood samples from him. Henry tells basically that every time he kills an animal, he feels better, and then Brenner suggests him that he would feel even more stronger and better if he kills human beings. Yeah, he was a grade A asshole. At one point, Brenner teaches him to use his anger to fuel his power. He would insult Henry and basically pushed him to the point where he would turn into a very violent person at the end of every session. Later, he gets a prisoner who has a death sentence to make him a lab rat for testing Henry's power. Henry refuses this because he has been talking to Petty through the void this whole time. Brenner knows something is holding him back from reaching his potential, but he just can't prove it. So he makes finding what's holding him back a primary objective. Henry tries to leave the lab, and Brenner kinda allows him to leave because he wants Henry to choose to kill. Because forcing him to kill will not unlock his potential. Similar to Project Nina from season 4, forcing Eleven wouldn't have helped her to restore her powers. She had to volunteer and commit herself to regain the powers, right? It's like that. Brenner has been giving Virginia tranquilizers to keep her under his influence, and he tells Virginia that his son needs his help. And he gets Virginia to tell her what's stopping Henry from doing the killing. Virginia tells it's Patty, and then Brenner promises that he will take Henry back to the lab. Henry returns to his house, and the first thing he does is reads his family's mind. And of course, he finds out about the conversation Brenner and Victoria had. He also learns Victoria is afraid of him and he doesn't want him there. And she doesn't want him there. That's when the Creel murder happens. The exact murder scene that happens in season 4 happens here, which kills Alice and Victoria, and Victor Creel gets blamed for it. After killing his family, Henry goes to Hawkins High looking for Patty. Henry finds Patty and convinces her to run away with him, but Brenner happens to be there looking for Patty to kill her basically. Brenner, as usual, insults him and says things like Patty is your weakness and you have to kill her to unlock your potential. Meanwhile, Patty is also trying to talk to him, but she says positive things instead. Brenner's words get to Henry and Mind Flayer takes over him. This results in Patty getting severely injured and Henry blanks out as well. Henry wakes up in the lab, and at this point, Brenner has implanted the soteria in Henry. That's the device that takes his powers away, like we have seen that in season 4. Okay, so there's a small inconsistency here, and I'll address it. In season 4, after the Creel house murders, we see that Henry passes out because it was the first time he killed humans. It was too much for him, obviously, at that point. At least that's what Henry tells Levin in season 4. But in the show, he supposedly goes to Hawkins' eye right after killing the Creel. So I'm not entirely sure if this is a mistake or something they added later. Stranger Things is known for its inconsistencies, so I'm not that surprised. All that being said, I haven't actually watched this myself. I can't point that out as a mistake. I got this info online, so take this with a grain of salt because I could be wrong as well. Henry finds Patty in the void, but she has left Hawkins to find her biological mother, and she ends up finding her out in Las Vegas. She walks using a stick now because of the accident, but Henry doesn't talk to her in this scene, and neither does he. He just stalks him and looks at her, and that's all. They don't really address what happened to the relationship after that. At this point, Brenner is testing Henry's blood samples on pregnant women, and he introduces them to Henry. And yeah, if you haven't guessed it already, Terry Ives is a part of this experiment, who happens to be Eleven's biological mother. We see eight, yeah, beloved Stranger Things character. I know. Then we are introduced to Levin, and then Henry tells him, "Hello, Levin, come with me." And basically, the show ends there. Yeah, that's a full circle moment. So yeah, that's exactly what happens in the first shadow. I mean, according to the internet at least. It sounds intriguing for sure, but still there are so many unanswered questions: how the Upside Down was created and how the Demogorgons work and all of that. But again, I'm not very sure if this is canon, so they could be doing something entirely different. But my gut tells me they will use so many points I mentioned in this video, Dimension X and all of that. But they obviously won't deep dive into it. At best, we will get an episode explaining how Henry got his powers. I'm not sure they won't. They might not show a flashback portion or anything, but someone might explain all, like recap whatever happens in the show. My guess is Joyce wasn't in Hawkins during season 4. Yeah, she's not aware of Henry's return as Vecna. So when she hears this name, it will ring a bell for her, and she will direct the team to Patty, and Patty will drop some Henry lore, and that's how we might get to know the rest of Henry's story. Similar to how Victor Creel reveals his side of the story in season 4, I think Patty will be that character. If my gut tells me. There's another theory going around that Will might actually get superpowers, which is highly possible too, because that's how Henry got his powers. There are so many similarities between how the mind flare affected Henry and Will. I would say almost the exact same, except Henry had powers and discovered it. I feel like Henry is basically what would have happened to Will if Joyce hadn't taken the mind flare out of him. But still, Will is very much a part of the mind flayer or the hive mind, and it looks like it might have messed his blood up as well. Plus, there are multiple rumors going around that he is the main character in season 5. And man, let's see what's gonna happen. Also, in Reddit, there's a whole ass debate on who vanishes in the second episode on season 5, because the title just says the vanishing of blank. Some say it's the vanishing of Holly Wheeler because in some behind the scene footages we see that Henry directly interacts with Holly Wheeler, and she is in a lot of promotional content as well, which is very weird because why would you just put Holly Wheeler in your promotion material if she is not going to be one of the main characters? So, and some say it might be Jane as well because of the missing post Netflix put out a while ago. But my guess is it'll probably be vanishing of Henry Creel, and a lot of people on Reddit seem to agree with that. But the majority thinks it'll be the vanishing of Holly Wheeler, but there's a small set of people who thinks it'll be vanishing of Henry Creel. And this episode will basically explain how Henry went missing in Dimension X, and came back with superpowers. The show has to touch on that subject for us to understand how Henry got his powers. So my money is on that, but let us watch and see. Plus, Netflix has started promoting season 4 like really hard. I mean, it's mostly just the cast members rewatching the show. Plus, there's an online event happening every week where the fans get together and watch an episode from every season. I registered and attended to it last week. The chosen episode was the vanishing of Will Byers from the first season. It was just people spamming Byler in the chat the entire time. I stayed there for a while and then I left, but it was nice to see a bunch of nerds just spamming Byler, I guess. And the big question seems to be who's gonna die in this season. Of course, since it's gonna be the end, they will definitely go for a beloved character. I mean, a fan favorite. So my money is definitely on Steve because I feel like he is the most loved character by the fans. I mean, there's a criticism that the Duffers won't kill the main characters, and if I'm not wrong, they addressed it as well. So I'm very sure one of the main characters will die, and they will go for the most beloved. So this will probably be Steve, and Steve will sacrifice himself for Dustin or Nancy. It'll be something like that. Plus, I think there will be a couple of more deaths too. I'm very sure Jonathan also might die because Nancy has a history with Vecna. I mean, whatever you saw in the fourth season. Plus, Vecna showed his vision to Nancy. So they have all the reason to go at it. And I feel like Jonathan will be killed just to get back at Nancy. The good endings, I think Levin will most probably get a good ending because she's a character who suffered from the very beginning. And I feel like giving her a bad ending almost sounds like doing a disservice to the character. She deserves a happy ending, and bro, come on, man. Like, hasn't she been through enough already? I would hate it if she gets a bad ending. That's just me. Plus, Levin is the one to take shit all the time, so it won't hit as much if she gets a bad ending. So I think Levin and Mike will be safe, but let's see. The rest of the characters, I think they have an equal chance of dying. I'm not entirely sure, and I don't even know what they have planned for Max. Some are saying she's in Vecna's mind, which theoretically makes sense, and she would help Levin to open a doorway to Vecna's mind, kind of similar to season 4. But I don't think they will go for that because that's exactly what they did with season 4. Levin piggybacked on Max to Vecna's mind. So I really don't know what they are going to do with Max. Let's wait and see. Every day I keep hearing some interesting thing about show. Apparently every episode is going to be 90 to 120 minutes long. It could be good, but it's very risky. Let me say that it can be a lot. Separating as three parts kind of makes sense given the runtime, but as a fan, I think I'm okay with this. But I can understand why regular people would be frustrated by this. I don't think the internet has a positive reaction to this, if I'm being honest. Plus, they have spent 480 million on season 5, making it one of the most expensive TV shows ever made, which is way more expensive than Endgame. Yeah, I'm not sure about this. I just hope you guys make the money back, but it's way too much, is all I know. Yeah, that's about it. I'm looking forward to season 4. I might make another video on fan theories and what I think about it, and if the theory is good or whatever. So, if you like the video, just comment something or like it. It could really help me. So, yeah, that's about it, guys. See you.